I never thought I would become the kind of person who checks their doorbell camera footage obsessively. But here I was, sitting in my home office in Charlotte, North Carolina, watching a 47-year-old woman with a highlighted bob haircut screaming at my front door for the third time that week. Her name was Patricia Henderson, and she had made it her personal mission to destroy my life from the moment I moved into the Meadowbrook Springs subdivision 6 months ago. The whole thing started innocently enough. I had bought a charming 3-bedroom colonial on Elmhurst Drive, excited to finally own property after years of renting cramped apartments in downtown Charlotte. The neighborhood seemed perfect: tree-lined streets, well-maintained homes, and a community pool that actually looked inviting. What I did not realize was that Patricia Henderson, the HOA president, ran Meadowbrook Springs like her own personal fiefdom, and she did not take kindly to anyone who did not follow her unwritten rules to the letter. My name is Ethan Daniels, and I work from home as a software developer for a tech company based in California. The remote work arrangement was perfect for me: no commute, flexible hours, and the ability to actually enjoy the house I was paying a mortgage on. I had set up my office in the front room with a view of the street, installed a smart doorbell camera for security, and settled into what I thought would be a peaceful suburban existence. The first incident happened 3 weeks after I moved in. I had painted my front door a deep navy blue, replacing the standard builder beige that came with the house. I thought it looked elegant and distinguished, a nice contrast to the brick facade. Patricia apparently thought it was a violation of the HOA covenants, though she could not point to any specific rule that prohibited it. She showed up at my door on a Saturday morning, already agitated. "Mr. Daniels, we need to discuss your door," she said, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. She was wearing a white visor despite the overcast sky and had the pinched expression of someone perpetually smelling something unpleasant. "What about it?" I asked, genuinely confused. "The color is not approved. All exterior paint choices must be submitted to the Architectural Review Committee for approval before implementation." I pulled up the HOA documents on my phone, something I had read thoroughly before purchasing the property. According to Section 7, subsection 3, homeowners can paint doors any color from the approved palette, which includes navy blue, dark green, burgundy, and black. I specifically chose navy because it was listed. Patricia's face flushed red. "That document is outdated. We updated the guidelines last year." "Then you need to provide me with the updated documents," I said, keeping my voice level. "The title company gave me the current covenants at closing, and nothing about door colors has changed according to county records." She did not like that answer. Over the next few weeks, I received 3 formal violation notices, each one more ridiculous than the last. My grass was allegedly too long, though I measured it myself, and it was well within the required 3-inch maximum. My garbage cans were visible from the street on a non-collection day, though I had brought them in within the allowed time frame. My mailbox was not uniform with neighborhood standards, despite being identical to every other mailbox on the block. I responded to each notice with documentation, photographs, and references to the actual HOA bylaws. Each time, the violations were dismissed, but Patricia's hostility grew. I started noticing her driving past my house multiple times a day, slowing down to stare at my property. My neighbors began mentioning that she was asking questions about me, trying to dig up dirt or find some legitimate violation she could use against me. The situation escalated in early November. I had installed solar panels on my roof, a decision I made both for environmental reasons and to reduce my energy bills. The installation was done by a licensed company, and I had obtained all necessary permits from the county. The panels were sleek, black, and barely visible from street level. I had also checked the HOA documents, which contained no restrictions on solar installations. North Carolina law actually prohibited HOAs from banning solar panels entirely, though they could regulate placement to some degree. Patricia lost her mind. She sent me a cease and desist letter, threatened to fine me $500 per day, and claimed I had destroyed the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood. I responded with a letter from my attorney, a friend from college named Marcus Chen, who specialized in real estate law. He politely informed the HOA that their threats were legally baseless, and that any attempt to fine me or force removal of the panels would result in a lawsuit under North Carolina General Statute 22B20, which protected homeowners' rights to install solar energy systems. That letter should have ended things, but it only made Patricia more determined. She started showing up at my house unannounced, demanding to inspect my property for violations. I refused entry each time, which was my legal right. She began filing noise complaints with the county, claiming I was running loud machinery at all hours. The sheriff's deputy who responded to the third complaint actually apologized to me, explaining that they had to respond to each call, but it was obvious nothing was amiss. "Between you and me," the deputy said, a middle-aged man named Officer Ramirez, "we get a lot of calls from Mrs. Henderson. She has a reputation." "That is comforting and concerning at the same time," I replied. "Just document everything," he advised. "If this turns into harassment, you will want records." I took his advice seriously. I started keeping a detailed log of every interaction with Patricia, every letter, every unannounced visit, every violation notice. My doorbell camera became an invaluable tool, recording every time she came to my property. I also installed 2 additional security cameras covering my backyard and driveway, just in case. The breaking point came on a cold Tuesday afternoon in mid-December. I was on a video call with my team, discussing a major project deadline, when my doorbell camera sent an alert to my phone. I glanced at it and saw Patricia marching up my walkway, her face already contorted in anger. I muted myself on the call and watched as she jabbed the doorbell repeatedly, then started pounding on the door with her fist. I unmuted myself. "Hey guys, I need to take care of something. Give me 5 minutes." I walked to the front door but did not open it. Instead, I spoke through the door. "Patricia, I am working. What do you need? Open this door right now," she shrieked. "You are in violation of multiple HOA rules and I demand to speak with you face to face. I am in the middle of a work meeting. You can email me your concerns and I will respond appropriately." "This is not a request, Mr. Daniels. As HOA president, I have the authority to enter your property for inspections." That was completely false, and we both knew it. "No, you do not. Please leave my property." The camera recorded what happened next in perfect high-definition clarity. Patricia's face went from red to nearly purple. She started screaming about how I was a troublemaker, how I did not belong in this neighborhood, how she was going to make my life hell. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "I have dealt with people like you before, and they always end up leaving one way or another. Do not think you are special, Mr. Daniels. Accidents happen all the time. House fires, break-ins, all sorts of unfortunate incidents. It would be a shame if something happened to your nice new solar panels or that fancy car of yours." I stood frozen on the other side of the door. Had she just threatened to damage my property? Or worse? I pulled out my phone and made sure the doorbell camera was capturing everything. "Are you threatening me, Patricia?" I asked through the door, keeping my voice steady. I am simply stating facts, she hissed. Bad things happen to people who do not cooperate. You should remember that. I am asking you again to leave my property. She finally left, but not before kicking my welcome mat and knocking over a potted plant I had near the door. I watched her storm back to her Mercedes SUV and speed away. I immediately downloaded the footage and backed it up in 3 different locations, the cloud, an external hard drive, and I emailed it to myself. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. That evening, around 7 p.m., I heard sirens outside. 2 police cruisers pulled up in front of my house, lights flashing. I walked outside, confused and concerned. "Ethan Daniels," one of the officers asked. "Yes, that is me. What is going on? We received a report that you threatened a neighbor. A Mrs. Patricia Henderson claims you became violent and verbally threatened her life when she came to discuss neighborhood concerns." My jaw dropped. That is completely false. She came to my house this afternoon. I refused to let her in, and she threatened me. The officer, whose name tag read Morrison, looked skeptical. "She says you opened the door, grabbed her arm, and told her you would make her disappear if she did not leave you alone. She has bruises on her arm." "I never touched her. I never even opened the door." I have video proof of the entire interaction. That got their attention. Officer Morrison and his partner, Officer Kim, followed me inside. I pulled up the doorbell camera footage on my computer and played it for them. They watched in silence as Patricia screamed threats at my closed door, clearly showing that I never made physical contact with her, and that she was the one making threatening statements. "Well," Officer Morrison said slowly, "this is not what was reported to us." "She is lying," I said flatly. "She has been harassing me for months because I would not bow to her illegal demands. I have documentation of everything." I showed them my log, the violation notices, the threatening letters, the records of her unannounced visits. Officer Kim took notes while Officer Morrison reviewed the video footage again. "Mr. Daniels, we are going to need a copy of this video," Morrison said. "What Mrs. Henderson told us constitutes filing a false police report, which is a crime. Her statements on this video could also be considered threatening." I provided them with a copy immediately. They took my statement and left, but not before advising me to consider filing for a restraining order if the harassment continued. I called Marcus that night and filled him in on everything. "This is serious, Ethan," he said. "She filed a false police report and made what could be considered criminal threats. You need to go on the offensive here. File for a restraining order tomorrow, and I will draft a lawsuit for harassment." "I just want to live in my house in peace," I said, exhausted. "I know, but this woman is not going to stop unless she faces consequences. Trust me on this." I spent most of that night unable to sleep, running through scenarios in my head. What if the police had not believed me? What if I had not had the camera footage? Patricia had been willing to lie to the police, to claim I assaulted her, all because I would not let her bully me. It was terrifying to realize how far she was willing to go. The next morning, I went to the Mecklenburg County Courthouse and filed for a civil no-contact order against Patricia Henderson. The process was more complicated than I expected, requiring detailed documentation of the harassment and specific instances where I felt threatened. Fortunately, I had everything organized. The clerk who helped me was professional but seemed unsurprised by the situation. "HOA dispute?" she asked. "Is it that obvious? We see a lot of these. Some HOA board members think they have more power than they actually do." She stamped my paperwork. "You will have a hearing date within 10 days. She will be served with notice, and you will both have an opportunity to present your cases to a judge." I left the courthouse feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. I was taking action. but I also knew this would make Patricia even more furious. Marcus filed the harassment lawsuit that afternoon, seeking damages for emotional distress and requesting an injunction preventing Patricia from contacting me or coming within 100 feet of my property. The next few days were quiet, almost eerily so. I did not see Patricia drive by, did not receive any violation notices, did not get any angry visits. I started to hope that maybe the police visit had scared her straight, that she realized she had gone too far. Then, on Friday evening, my doorbell camera alerted me again. It was not Patricia this time, but a man I recognized as Dale Henderson, her husband. He was in his early 50s, balding, and looked deeply uncomfortable. I opened the door this time, keeping the security chain engaged. "Mr. Daniels, I am Dale Henderson. I wanted to apologize for my wife's behavior. I was not expecting that." "Okay." Patricia told me her version of what happened, but I saw the police report. I know she lied. He looked miserable. She has been under a lot of stress and she gets fixated on things. She convinced herself you were deliberately trying to undermine her authority as HOA president. "I just wanted to live in my house," I said. "I have not violated any actual rules. I know. I have tried to tell her that, but she does not listen to me anymore." He rubbed his face tiredly. "I saw that you filed for a restraining order and a lawsuit. I do not blame you, but I wanted to ask if there was any way to resolve this without court. Patricia could lose her position on the HOA board, and she might face criminal charges." "Your wife told the police I assaulted her," I said, my anger rising. "She threatened to burn down my house. She has harassed me for 6 months straight. Why should I care about the consequences she faces for her own actions?" "You should not," Dale admitted. "You have every right to pursue this." "I just had to try, for my marriage if nothing else. Patricia needs help, professional help, but she will not admit it." I felt a twinge of sympathy for him, but not enough to change my mind. "I appreciate you coming here and apologizing, but I am not dropping the restraining order or the lawsuit. Your wife needs to face consequences, or she will keep doing this to other people." Dale nodded sadly. "I understand. I am sorry for everything." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it is worth, I voted against all those violation notices she sent you. I am on the HOA board too, treasurer position, but she does not let anyone else have a real say in decisions." After he left, I called Marcus and told him about the conversation. He advised me not to have any further contact with either Henderson without him present. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday, and we needed to stay focused on presenting our case. That weekend, I discovered that news of the situation had spread through the neighborhood. My next-door neighbor, a retired teacher named Barbara Matthews, came over with a casserole and some information. "I heard about what Patricia did," she said, settling into my kitchen chair. "I am not surprised, but I am glad someone is finally standing up to her." "Has she done this to other people?" I asked. "Oh, honey, you are the 4th person she has targeted in the 3 years I have lived here. The first family moved out after 6 months. She made their lives so miserable they sold at a loss just to escape. The second person fought back but eventually gave up when she vandalized his car and no one could prove it. The third person was a single woman who worked nights as a nurse. Patricia claimed her irregular schedule was disturbing the peace and harassed her until she left too." I felt sick. Why did not anyone stop her? Most people keep their heads down. She is vicious, and she has allies on the board. Her best friend Janet Kramer is the secretary, and they vote together on everything. Dale tries to be reasonable, but she bulldozes over him. The other 2 board members are too scared to oppose her. This is insane. How is she still in charge? Most homeowners do not bother coming to meetings or voting in elections. Patricia runs unopposed every year because no one wants the job, and no one wants to deal with her wrath if they try to remove her. Barbara leaned forward. But a lot of us are fed up. If you are willing to fight this, you will have support. That conversation changed my perspective. This was not just about me anymore. Patricia was a bully who had driven multiple people out of their homes, and she would keep doing it unless someone stopped her. I was in a position to fight back because I had resources, documentation, and legal support. I decided I was going to see this through, no matter what it took. The restraining order hearing arrived quickly. Marcus met me at the courthouse, and we went over our presentation one more time. We had the doorbell camera footage, my detailed logs, copies of all the frivolous violation notices, and statements from Officer Morrison about the false police report. Patricia arrived with her own attorney, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit. Patricia was dressed conservatively, her hair perfect, playing the role of a respectable community leader. When our case was called, we entered the courtroom and stood before Judge Andrea Walsh, a stern woman in her 60s with sharp eyes. The proceeding started with my attorney presenting our case. Marcus was thorough and professional, walking Judge Walsh through the timeline of harassment, the escalating behavior, and finally the threatening statements and false police report. When he played the doorbell camera footage, I watched Patricia's face. She showed no emotion, as if she was watching something that did not concern her. Patricia's attorney, a woman named Deanne Foster, tried to paint me as an uncooperative homeowner who refused to follow reasonable community standards. She argued that Patricia was simply doing her job as HOA president, and that I had escalated the situation by being hostile and uncooperative. Mrs. Henderson came to Mr. Daniels's home to discuss legitimate concerns about his property modifications, Foster argued. She was met with aggression and hostility. The situation has been blown out of proportion. Judge Walsh looked unimpressed. Miss Foster, I have reviewed the video evidence. Your client made specific threatening statements about house fires and break-ins. She also filed a police report claiming Mr. Daniels physically assaulted her, which the video clearly shows did not happen. How do you explain that? Foster stumbled. Your Honor, Mrs. Henderson was upset and may have exaggerated her account to police. She felt threatened by Mr. Daniels's refusal to engage with her. Feeling threatened does not justify filing a false report, Judge Walsh said coldly. She turned to Patricia. Mrs. Henderson, do you understand that making false statements to police is a crime? Patricia stood, her composure finally cracking. I did not lie. He was aggressive. He made me fear for my safety. The video shows you made the threatening statements, not him. You claimed he opened the door and grabbed you. The video clearly shows the door remained closed. Judge Walsh shuffled through papers. I am granting the no-contact order. Mrs. Henderson, you are prohibited from contacting Mr. Daniels directly or indirectly, from coming within 100 feet of his property, and from initiating any HOA actions against him without board approval. This order will remain in effect for 1 year, at which point Mr. Daniels can petition for renewal if necessary. Patricia's face went white, then red. This is ridiculous. I am the HOA president. I have a responsibility to the community. You can fulfill your responsibilities without harassing Mr. Daniels, Judge Walsh said firmly. I am also referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review regarding the false police report. You may face criminal charges. We left the courthouse with the restraining order in hand. Patricia stood on the courthouse steps, screaming at her attorney loud enough for everyone to hear. I did not look back, Just got in my car and drove home with Marcus. That went well, Marcus said. Judge Walsh does not tolerate this kind of behavior. The DA might actually prosecute, especially with the video evidence. What happens with the civil lawsuit? I asked. We continue forward. This restraining order actually strengthens our case. It shows a judge already found her behavior threatening and harassing. Marcus glanced at me. How are you holding up? I am tired, I admitted. I just want this to be over. It will be. Patricia overplayed her hand. She's going to face real consequences now. Over the next few weeks, the fallout was dramatic. The local newspaper got wind of the story and published an article about HOA overreach and the importance of video evidence in disputes. My name was kept confidential, but Patricia was identified as the HOA president who faced a restraining order for harassment. The article interviewed several former residents who shared their own stories of being driven out by Patricia's aggressive tactics. The publicity was devastating for Patricia. An emergency HOA meeting was called, and homeowners showed up in record numbers. I attended, sitting in the back row with Marcus. The meeting room at the community center was packed, standing room only. The meeting was explosive. Homeowner after homeowner stood up to share complaints about Patricia's leadership. People talked about arbitrary rule enforcement, personal vendettas, and the hostile environment she had created. Barbara Matthews presented a petition signed by 60% of homeowners calling for Patricia's immediate removal as president. Patricia tried to maintain control, banging her gavel and demanding order, but the crowd was too angry. Finally, Dale Henderson stood up. I moved to remove Patricia Henderson as HOA president effective immediately and to hold emergency elections for a new board. I second the motion, Barbara called out. The vote was overwhelming. 73 homeowners voted for removal, 8 voted against. Patricia was out. She stood there, stunned as the reality sank in. Then she pointed a shaking finger at me. "This is all your fault," she screamed across the room. "You poisoned everyone against me. I was protecting this neighborhood." "Mrs. Henderson," Marcus stood up, his voice calm but firm. "You are violating the restraining order by speaking to my client. I suggest you leave now before we call the police." Patricia grabbed her belongings and stormed out, Dale following behind her with slumped shoulders. Janet Kramer, her ally on the board, resigned on the spot, claiming she did not need this kind of stress. The remaining board members scheduled elections for the following month and agreed to conduct a comprehensive review of all HOA actions taken in the past 3 years. I thought that would be the end of it, but Patricia had one more card to play. 2 days after the HOA meeting, I came home from getting groceries to find graffiti spray painted across my garage door. The words were crude and vicious, calling me names and telling me to move out. My security cameras had been spray painted too, rendering them useless. I called the police immediately. Officer Ramirez responded, along with a detective named Sarah Turner. They photographed everything and took my statement. I explained the ongoing situation with Patricia, the restraining order, and the recent HOA meeting. "You have any footage from before the cameras were painted?" Detective Turner asked. "The cameras upload to the cloud in real time," I said. "Even if they are destroyed, I should have footage up until they were painted. We reviewed the footage in my house." At 2:30 in the afternoon, a figure in a dark hoodie and sunglasses approached my property. The person looked around nervously, then spray-painted the garage door and both visible security cameras. The face was obscured, but the build and movements were distinctly feminine. More importantly, when the person hurried back to their vehicle parked down the street, the footage captured enough of the license plate to run it. That is a Mercedes SUV, Officer Ramirez noted. Same type Patricia Henderson drives. Detective Turner made a call, running the partial plate. She looked up after a moment. Registered to Dale and Patricia Henderson, 412 Maple Grove Lane. That is in this neighborhood, I said. About 4 streets over. Stay here, Detective Turner said. We are going to pay the Hendersons a visit. Do not clean up the graffiti yet. We need to process it as evidence. They left, and I sat in my living room feeling a mix of vindication and disbelief. Patricia had actually vandalized my property while under a restraining order, just days after being removed as HOA president. It was so reckless, so stupid, that I almost could not believe it. Marcus arrived within the hour. I had called him as soon as the police left. He photographed everything from multiple angles and took detailed notes. She is done, he said flatly. This is criminal mischief, violation of a restraining order, and possibly stalking depending on how the DA wants to charge it. She is going to jail, Ethan. Good, I said, and I meant it. I was done feeling sympathetic or trying to understand her perspective. She had crossed too many lines. Detective Turner called me 3 hours later. Mr. Daniels, we executed a search warrant on the Henderson property. We found the hoodie and sunglasses in Patricia Henderson's car, along with 3 cans of spray paint that match the graffiti on your property. She is being arrested and charged with criminal mischief, violation of a restraining order, and we are adding charges related to the false police report she filed previously. What happens now? I asked. She will be arraigned tomorrow. Given the violation of a restraining order, the judge will likely set bail conditions that include no contact with you and possibly home confinement. This is serious, Mr. Daniels. She is looking at potential jail time. That evening, I received an unexpected visit from Dale Henderson. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past few weeks, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes rumpled. I spoke to him through the closed door, with Marcus on speaker phone as a witness. Mr. Daniels, I know I should not be here, but I had to come, Dale said, his voice breaking. Patricia was arrested this afternoon. She is going to be charged with multiple crimes. Our marriage is over, our reputation is destroyed, and it is all because she could not let go of this vendetta against you. I am sorry you are caught up in this, I said, and I genuinely was. But your wife made her choices. I know. I am not asking for mercy or for you to drop charges. I just wanted you to know that I am divorcing her. I am also resigning from the HOA board. I cannot be part of this neighborhood anymore after everything that has happened. He paused. I am also here to give you this. He slid an envelope under the door. I picked it up and opened it carefully. Inside was a check for $15,000 and a handwritten note. This is my personal money, not joint funds, Dale said. It is to cover your legal expenses, repairs, and any other costs you have incurred because of Patricia's behavior. It is not enough, I know, but it is what I can do. The note authorizes you to use it as restitution, so it cannot be seen as trying to influence you. I looked at the check, then at Marcus on the phone. He nodded slightly. Dale, you did not have to do this, I said. Yes, I did. I sat back while my wife terrorized people. I told myself I was keeping the peace, that I was preventing things from getting worse, but really I was just a coward. You stood up to her, and you are the one who suffered for it. This is the least I can do. He left after that, and I did not see him again. I later heard he moved out of state to live with his sister in Virginia, finalizing his divorce remotely and selling the house at a significant loss just to be done with it. Patricia's arraignment was a media circus. The story had gained traction beyond Charlotte, becoming a cautionary tale about HOA abuse and the importance of documenting harassment. News vans lined up outside the courthouse, and reporters tried to interview everyone involved. I declined all interview requests on Marcus's advice, but several neighbors spoke to reporters, sharing their own experiences with Patricia. At the arraignment, Patricia pleaded not guilty to all charges. Her attorney argued that she was having a mental health crisis and needed treatment, not incarceration. The judge was unmoved, setting bail at $50,000 with strict conditions including GPS monitoring, no contact with me or any other Meadowbrook Springs residents, and mandatory psychiatric evaluation. Patricia made bail, but her life was in shambles. She lost her job, a part-time position at a local real estate office that could not afford the negative publicity. Her friends abandoned her as more stories came out about her behavior. The HOA banned her from all common areas and meetings, effectively making her persona non grata in her own neighborhood. The criminal case moved forward over the next few months. The DA assigned a prosecutor named Jennifer Marshall, a no-nonsense woman who specialized in stalking and harassment cases. She met with me several times, building a comprehensive case that included not just the vandalism, but the entire pattern of harassment and threats. Patricia Henderson is a textbook bully, Jennifer told me during one meeting. She targets people she perceives as challenging her authority, escalates her behavior when they do not comply, and then plays the victim when she faces consequences. The false police report is particularly egregious because it could have resulted in your arrest if not for your video evidence. What kind of sentence is she looking at? I asked. For the criminal mischief and restraining order violation alone, she is looking at up to 2 years. Add in the false report charge and she could get up to 5 years total. Realistically, as a first-time offender, she will probably get probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. But that depends on whether she takes a plea deal or goes to trial. Patricia's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal that would avoid jail time entirely, but Jennifer was not interested in being lenient. The case was too high profile, and there was too much evidence of deliberate, malicious behavior. Finally, 2 weeks before the scheduled trial, Patricia agreed to a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to criminal mischief, violation of a restraining order, and filing a false police report. In exchange, she received a sentence of 18 months in jail, suspended to 3 years of supervised probation, 500 hours of community service, mandatory anger management and psychiatric counseling, and an order to pay full restitution for all damages and legal expenses I had incurred. The civil lawsuit was settled separately. Patricia's insurance policy covered some of it, but she was personally liable for $50,000 in damages, which would be paid out over time from the sale of her marital assets. Between Dale's voluntary payment and the settlement, I was more than compensated for my expenses, though no amount of money could really make up for the stress and anxiety of the past year. The sentencing hearing was brief, but satisfying. Patricia stood before the judge, dressed in a conservative gray suit, and read a prepared statement apologizing for her actions. It sounded hollow and rehearsed, like she was reading someone else's words. Judge Walsh, the same judge who had granted my restraining order, was not impressed. Mrs. Henderson, you abused your position of authority in your community to harass and intimidate someone who was simply trying to live peacefully in his home, Judge Walsh said. You filed a false police report that could have resulted in serious consequences for an innocent person. You violated a court order and vandalized property out of spite and revenge. Your behavior was not just wrong, it was dangerous and criminal. I hope you use your probation period to reflect on your actions and make genuine changes. Patricia was led out of the courtroom by her probation officer to begin her community service. I never saw her again in person, though I heard updates through the neighborhood grapevine. She moved to an apartment in a different part of Charlotte, far from Meadowbrook Springs. She completed her community service at a homeless shelter and attended counseling as required. Whether she actually changed or just learned to hide her true nature better, I do not know. Life in Meadowbrook Springs improved dramatically after Patricia's removal. The new HOA board, elected in a highly contested vote, was composed of reasonable people who actually read the bylaws and applied rules fairly. Barbara Matthews became the new president and immediately implemented reforms including transparent decision-making, regular communication with homeowners, and a formal appeals process for violations. One of the first things the new board did was issue a formal apology to me and the other homeowners Patricia had targeted. They also voted to remove several arbitrary rules Patricia had tried to enforce that were not actually in the covenants. The neighborhood became what it should have been all along, a pleasant community where people could live without fear of capricious enforcement and personal vendettas. My next-door neighbor Barbara became a good friend. We started having regular barbecues, inviting other neighbors to build a genuine sense of community. People who had been scared to make any changes to their properties started installing gardens, painting doors, and making their houses feel like homes instead of cookie-cutter units. The doorbell camera that had saved me from Patricia's false accusations became something of a legend in the neighborhood. Several neighbors installed their own security cameras after hearing my story, recognizing the importance of being able to document interactions and protect themselves. I became an unofficial advisor on home security systems, helping people choose equipment and set up their cameras properly. The local news did a follow-up story 6 months after Patricia's sentencing, focusing on how the neighborhood had recovered and changed. They interviewed me, and I agreed to participate this time, hoping my story might help others dealing with HOA abuse. "Document everything," I told the reporter, a young woman named Amy Chen. "Keep detailed records, install security cameras, and know your rights." HOAs can be beneficial organizations, but they can also be abused by people with authoritarian tendencies. The only way to protect yourself is to be prepared and be willing to fight back when necessary. The story resonated with people across the country dealing with their own HOA nightmares. I received dozens of emails from people asking for advice, sharing their own stories, and thanking me for speaking out. Marcus actually started a small side practice helping homeowners deal with HOA disputes, using my case as a template for how to document and fight back against harassment. 1 year after the initial confrontation, I was finally able to truly relax in my home. The restraining order was still in effect, though I had not heard anything from or about Patricia in months. My house looked exactly how I wanted it: navy blue door, solar panels, a vegetable garden I had planted in my backyard without asking permission, because it was not against any actual rules, and security cameras covering every angle. I was sitting on my front porch on a Saturday afternoon, drinking coffee and reading a book when a car pulled up. A young couple got out, looking at the house across the street with a for sale sign in the yard. They walked over to me, smiling tentatively. "Hi, I am sorry to bother you," the woman said. "We are thinking about buying that house. Can you tell us what the neighborhood is like?" I smiled. "It is a great neighborhood now. The HOA is reasonable, the neighbors are friendly, and it is a safe place to live. Come sit down, and I will tell you everything you need to know about Meadowbrook Springs." As I talked to them about the community explaining the HOA structure and the improvements that had been made, I realized how far we had all come. What could have been a story about a bully driving me out of my home became a story about standing up for what was right, demanding accountability, and building something better from the ashes of a toxic situation. The young couple bought the house across the street and moved in 2 months later. They became part of the community, attending HOA meetings and neighborhood events. I helped them understand the rules and reassured them that the horror stories they might have heard about were in the past. Patricia Henderson became a cautionary tale in Meadowbrook Springs, a reminder of what happens when someone abuses power without accountability. The neighborhood thrived without her. Property values increased because people actually wanted to live there now. And the HOA functioned as it was meant to, maintaining standards while respecting homeowners' rights. My security cameras still run 24 hours a day, uploading footage to the cloud. I still keep detailed records of any official correspondence. But now, instead of documenting harassment, I am just recording normal neighborhood life, kids riding bikes, neighbors walking dogs, the peaceful, mundane existence I had hoped for when I first moved to Charlotte. Sometimes I think about Patricia and wonder if she learned anything from the experience. I hope she did, for her sake and for the sake of anyone else who might cross her path. But mostly, I do not think about her at all anymore. She took up enough of my time and energy, and I refuse to give her any more. The doorbell camera that proved she threatened me first still sits above my front door, a silent guardian that I hope never needs to capture anything more dramatic than a package delivery. But if it does, I know I am prepared. I know my rights, I have good legal representation, and I have a community that will support truth over lies. Living in Meadowbrook Springs turned out to be everything I hoped for, just not in the way I expected. I did not find peace by avoiding conflict. I found it by standing up to someone who thought she was untouchable, by insisting on accountability, and by refusing to be driven from my home by threats and lies. The navy blue door still looks great. The solar panels still save me money every month, and my mailbox is exactly as uniform as everyone else's, which is to say, not very uniform at all because that is not actually a requirement. On the anniversary of the day Patricia first knocked on my door to complain about my paint color, I threw a neighborhood block party. We grilled burgers, played music, and celebrated the community we had built together. Barbara gave a speech thanking everyone who had stood up against the old regime and worked to create something better. People applauded and cheered, and I felt genuinely happy to be part of Meadowbrook Springs. As the sun set that evening and neighbors drifted back to their homes, I stood in my driveway looking at my house. The house that I had fought to keep, to make my own, to defend against someone who thought rules were weapons to be wielded against people she did not like. The fight had been exhausting and stressful, but it had been worth it. My doorbell camera sent me a notification, just Barbara waving goodbye as she walked past. I waved back and she called out, "Thanks for not giving up, Ethan. We are all better off because you stood your ground." I went inside, locked the door, and sat down in my home office where this whole thing had started. The room where I had been working when Patricia first came to scream threats at my door. The room where I had watched security footage and documented every interaction. The room where I had made the decision to fight back instead of giving in or moving away. That decision changed everything, not just for me but for an entire neighborhood that had been suffering under a tyrant's rule. It showed that documentation matters, that truth matters, and that standing up to bullies is worth it even when it is difficult and scary. My doorbell camera did more than just prove Patricia threatened me first. It proved that accountability is possible, that justice can prevail, and that regular people can fight back against those who abuse power. The cameras still record, the logs still document, and I still live in Meadowbrook Springs. But now, instead of recording evidence of harassment, they just capture ordinary life in a neighborhood that finally learned what it means to be a real community. And that, more than any legal victory or financial settlement, is what makes all of it worthwhile. I am home, truly home, in a place where I can paint my door any approved color, install solar panels without threats, and live in peace knowing that truth backed by evidence will always win over lies and intimidation.